Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I'm joined by Harry Huggable. Oh, what the? I don't even know anymore. Gay, big dudes with hair who love movies. Will is adequately demonstrating our point. We love movies. We hope you do too. Otherwise, why the hell are you here? Anyway, I'm joined this week as usual by Jim Pugliafico.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Right. And Will Lindis.
Hello to our viewers and to our listeners. Welcome back.
All right. So we are going to give you a little bit of a visual clue as to what we'll be talking about tonight. For those of you who are watching us on YouTube, at least, give you a hint. It smells good. It tastes good. What am I holding in my hand? Jim, what's that in your hand? Oh.
I don't know, but it's going in my mouth right now.
Oh, my. And the encouragers go wild.
Oh, my. Not just the encouragers. Anyone that's listening to the podcast is like, what could it be?
Will, what have you got?
Well, I am rocking something warm and delicious to put in my mouth.
Oh, my. It's so big. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I have something really...
A little spicy.
I have something really creamy and soft to put in mine.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
So for those of you just listening, we're eating pizza.
Yeah.
Cowabunga, dude!
Woo!
As I attempt to...
chewing all episode long, like. So what'd you think of that movie, Jim?
Chewing in the mic.
Indeed. So as alluded by our pizza-y goodness, we are reviewing the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reboot by director Michael Bay. We'll also be...
Director Jonathan Liebsman. Producer Michael Bay.
Producer Michael Bay. It might as well be the same thing, really.
Maybe.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. We'll also be reviewing Boyhood by director Richard Linklater.
Not Michael Bay.
Not Michael Bay. Decidedly not Michael Bay. But before we get to our reviews this week, you know, typically we do a little bit of movie news, and this week we've got a big one. Unfortunately, Robin Williams has passed away due to apparent suicide. It's been all over Facebook. People are commenting they're sick of hearing about it, so we're going to talk about it anyway, just because it is pertinent, and we love Robin Williams. So if you want to tune out for 5 minutes, we understand, but we hope you will join us in sharing a little bit of Robin Williams love. I don't know about you, Will. We're kind of around the same age, but for me, Robin Williams was one of my first Bear crushes. It was him and Jonathan Frakes over my shoulder. I remember seeing Robin Williams in various different movies, and it was always his furry arms that caught my attention. And I was always like fascinated with those as a kid, which probably sounds weird, but you know, he was just so funny and kind and witty. I loved the heck out of him as a kid, and as an adult, his films just continued to really touch me. Some of the sillier ones like Toys, you know, Birdcage, I know, Take My Gay Card, weren't my favorites, but movies like Patch Adams and Dead Poets Society really spoke to me on a lot of levels. And I mean, there's a reason he's an Academy Award winner, and he was a pretty phenomenal actor. So I'm definitely going to miss him. But what about you guys?
Yeah, I am in the same boat. It's one of those things when you're a kid, you usually cut your teeth on what? Cartoons, right? And Robin Williams was one of those guys who, as a kid, transitioning into like real movies, you know, you've got this guy who's so animated, who's so full of life, so over the top that he was a really good like transition to the world of like, okay, slightly, you know, real life movies, but you know, not cartoons. And then with his catalog, you had a lot of films that were all along the spectrum. I mean, as a kid, I was all about the genie in Aladdin. I was all about roles like I personally really enjoyed him in Toys, and I really enjoyed Mrs. Doubtfire, and some roles like that. As I got older, you got to appreciate films more like What Dreams May Come, which is such a punch in the gut, especially on the heels of all of this. Good Will Hunting, Fisher, going back through his catalog, Fisher King, Dead Poet Society, Good Morning Vietnam. There's almost everyone has their favorite like Robin Williams film. He's also one of those guys, like a couple times I've made a trip out to Hollywood to do the whole Walk of Fame thing, see all the little stars, and I've been twice, and each time I've made it a point to get pictures with Robin Williams' handprints, and here
I saw that on Facebook.
Like my last couple trips, it's all been find Robin Williams' handprint, which is really easy to do, and find Houdini's star, also easy to do because I know where it's at, because both of them are people that I look up to quite a bit. So this was hard for me. I think this is hard for a lot of people in my age group, in my peer group, because we grew up with this guy, and we don't. It's hard to really talk about kind of what happened to him because we don't know. We don't know necessarily what he went through, nor will we ever. I mean, this is anything that could lead to suicide, depression, those types of feelings are invisible monsters that perch on your shoulder. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate. It's terribly unfortunate. And yeah, I don't really have too much to say on it. That hasn't been said already on Facebook or through everything. It's just, damn, this really sucks.
It does.
Yeah, it was kind of a shock to me too. You guys grew. I guess he kind of spanned a lot of generations. His work. I remember him initially from the TV show Mork and Mindy.
Absolutely,
he played Mork from Mork, right? And I think that's how a lot of America, at least in my generation, got to know him, and then follow him through his TV and movie career. I mean, the guy was just so had so much range, right? He had he was most widely known for his that crazy, frenetic, over the top, just comedy style. That he used to use. He used in Orc. You saw it in the Fisher King a little bit with that character. Mrs. Doubtfire, the genie in Aladdin. I mean, that was kind of more in line with the comedy style that he had. But he also played a lot of very subdued characters, which showed a totally other side of his acting abilities, and that's when I really thought that he was at his best. And when the news of his death was announced yesterday, I think it was. I just started to remember, some of the more likable roles that I liked him in. And the first one that came to mind for me was like The World According to Garp. I love that movie. I love John Irving's writing, but it was such an understated performance from him. And that movie is kind of an underrated movie. And here he was playing, this wild and crazy comedian personality in a movie where he's playing probably the most normal dude in the movie, and everybody around him is kind of nuts. So I really like that movie. And another one that really came to mind was a movie called Awakenings. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. He played with Robert De Niro. He played Dr. Sayer. It's a true story, I think, about a doctor who worked with people who were suffering from dementia and certain mental diseases, who discovered the effects of dopamine could have on these people. And pretty awesome movie. It should have gotten him an award, but he didn't. He did get his Best Supporting Actor Oscar in the Good Will Hunting role. Another role where he played very subdued therapist, kind of a down-to-earth kind of guy. So he had those two sides, and I just really am going to miss him. Luckily, we have these movies to fall back on and watch and remember. I was watching some clips on YouTube today, and it was really awesome, and made me want to go back and watch some of those movies. Just an immensely talented guy. Hate to lose that kind of a talent, and it makes it especially heartbreaking when you hear the news reports of what may have been happening. And we don't know, like you said, Will. We really don't know what he was going through, but you can imagine how difficult it was for him to come to this end. So it's just sad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, of course, stars always seem to die in threes. Lauren Bacall passed away as well.
Right. I just found that out just before the show, actually.
Right.
Yeah. Just broke a little earlier today. So who will star number 3 be? I don't know.
Hopefully we'll break the rule here.
Yeah.
We could do without
use a break. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed. So, but Robin Williams, yeah, absolutely will be incredibly, incredibly missed. He was on a new TV show called The Crazy Ones, which I actually feel bad for sort of hating on now because I saw the trailers for it. He was doing kooky, stupid little songs in the trailer, and I just thought, ugh, my God, like, what does this man come to having to do this TV show? And now I actually want to go watch it because I'm like, it's the last thing he did. Jim, are you rolling your eyes? I
remember watching the trailers and like you, kind of saying, "Oh my God, look at and that's not really a reflection on him as an actor, right? That's like here's a property where if anybody was in that role, I probably would have been rolling my eyes. So that's no reflection on him and his legacy. When sometimes we have favorite actors that take roles that we sometimes wish maybe they hadn't, right? So I think that show was short-lived. I think it only made it one season.
Yeah,
it did,
just the one.
One of the things
he's got 3. He had like 2 or 3 movies already in post-production. So we will be seeing him posthumously in some movies that are coming out. I think one of them is a Christmas movie. So. Maybe as early as the end of this year, we'll be seeing him on the screen again.
Yeah, I know one of them's the next Night at the Museum.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good time. I don't know about the rest of you if you have any plans for this, but one of the things I had on in the background while I was working today was there's and I picked the worst, probably the worst one possible, but I was looking at some of the catalog that he had on Netflix. And saw one that I somehow managed to miss back in 2009, and it was World's Greatest Dad. And that's a hard one to watch in context of this because it deals with the man who's dealing with his son who died. So it's played more as a dark comedy, but that was like I was like, I want to check this one out, and I was like, oh God, this is like.
Too difficult to watch. Yeah.
Too soon. Yeah. But it's definitely one to watch. It's a good dark comedy. Outside of kind of outside of the timing.
Absolutely.
Will, you mentioned that one. It's been on my list for a while to watch. It's a Bobcat Goldthwait directed movie, I think. And
it is.
I've got a few of his on my list, and that's definitely one that's at the top.
All right. Well, Captain, my captain, you will be missed. You guys ready to bring things up a little bit?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Want to get your pizza eating quip totingness on?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes,
All right.
Yeah. Something.
Here we go.
Let's talk about a movie.
Here we go. Our discussion of the new Michael Bay produced, not directed, thanks Brad, jerk, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja... Anyway, loved that cartoon growing up as a kid. I actually played with Ninja Turtles before the cartoon ever came out, so I feel like I need hipster glasses and a packet of American Spirits in my shirt pocket or something. Oh, Jim's eating more pizza. Encouragers, enjoy. I liked the Turtles before they were cool, but the Ninja Turtles have always been a big part of my inner child life. Even as recent as some of the new CGI animated shows that have come out, I haven't kept up with them, but I check back every once in a while just out of curiosity. And while I think the original Ninja Turtles cartoon from the 90s and the comic book are my preferred medium for enjoying some Heroes in a Half Shell. I did really like the movie from the 90s, although we watched it the other night, and I don't know that it holds up so well. But we have a new movie out. It's one of those things where we'll do it like we normally do, and we'll sort of give you the non-spoilery advice on whether we think you should see it. We've all seen the film from the 90s at this point. Jim, this was your first indoctrination the other night.
That's true. That's true. I'm coming at it from behind, if you will.
Indeed, indeed. So why don't we kind of kick the discussion off just real quick and dirty? Some impressions between the original film versus this one. What worked for you? What didn't? Jim.
Oh, you want me to start? Oh,
sure.
So yeah, I mean, so we're talking about the original film in comparison to this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, boy, like I said, having no, I don't have this movie or the TV show in my nostalgia bank. It was just something that came out when I was already past childhood. So it didn't really appeal to me. I never really got into it. Really didn't watch the movie. Didn't watch any of the shows. Went into this movie pretty, without any of the kind of the nostalgia ties that I think maybe you guys both might have. I don't know, and many other people do. But man, watching that 1990 movie last night, that I'm kind of at a loss. I guess I can see maybe if you were a kid back in those days, how you would have loved that movie, but I just don't think it's one of those movies that holds up really in any way. And we'll get into what I think about the new movie, but boy, the only thing that I will say about that movie is that it kind of captured the spirit of teenager more than the new movie. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles didn't, for the most part, didn't seem so teenagery to me. For some weird reason, they might be a little bit older. At least a couple of them seemed like they were maybe older than teenagers, or very old teenagers. But that's just kind of the vibe that I got. Whereas the old ones, they definitely were more teenagery. I also dug Megan Fox in the new movie more than I dug the other, what's her name? April. What's her name?
Well, the actress's name is Judith something.
No, but what's the?
Oh, April O'Neil.
April O'Neil.
Character. I think I didn't dig the old April O'Neil character or performance very much. Yeah, I guess it's interesting. I think you guys are going to get a different view of it with me coming at it the other way than because I'd be hard pressed to agree with somebody who says that the old movie is way, way better than this new movie.
Okay. Will, what about you?
So I believe that the old movie was way, way better than this one.
Okay, we're gonna have to get into that.
So one of the things all right, let's. The 1990s movie was a kind of a blend of two different eras of Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles started off as this really kind of dark and gritty comic book that was meant as a lampooning of what was happening in the Frank Miller Daredevil comics. Then you have this the 87 cartoon that came out, which was all about like let's have fun and let's sell toys. But one of the things that it did better than the comics was it made the characters have a lot more personality and they're more individual, and you got to learn like why Donatello does machines or Leonardo's the leader or what have you. And the 90s movie was the perfect blend, I think, of the two. It let the characters have their individuality while keeping the stakes and some of the high, the more important stuff, kind of dark, gritty without being too dark and gritty. It balanced a line that I think it needed to balance, and by comparison, I think this the newest movie really stumbles in that it tries to set up too much of an origin story. That includes way too much of the April O'Neil stuff and not enough of the Turtle stuff, at least for good portions of the film. We'll talk about what that is and why that is when we get to it. I also think that comparatively, this is going to be probably a sticking point, but I think that based on the time period, I think that the effects in the '90s movie were way better than the effects in this newest one.
That's interesting to hear.
The '90s film. This is think about the time. This is 1990. This is costumes that are done by the Henson Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
These are costumes that, by maybe today's standards, I mean, we're talking, what, 24 years later? Yeah, we have better technology. We can do more things with both practical effects and with CGI. But at the time, it was I mean, Brad, I don't know if you remember this, but it felt like a really good, solid translation of these cartoon characters to film.
Oh,
By
hell
comparison, the CGI in this film, one of the big problems I had with it was it felt dated by current standards. A few scenes being exceptions, but a lot of the character designs, a lot of just the plasticity of the characters, the way Splinter looked, felt like it was like circa 2004 instead of circa 2014. So, yes, I can say that comparatively, like, yeah, there's more effects in this one to the 1990 version, but based on the time that those films were produced, the 1990s one did a lot more for what it was doing. Better story, better characters. I would agree that I would actually wager that I wasn't a big fan of either April O'Neil, so I think that, like, I'm not going to be able to choose a winner there. The cartoon April O'Neil, that's my pick. I think
your stupid yellow coat out of here.
Cartoon April O'Neil was a lot of, like, straight boys, like First Crush was cartoon April O'Neil. I hear that a lot of my friends, like, yeah, man, it's April O'Neil. That's like that's how I learned I was a man. I mean, I didn't have children.
Oh boy.
So we'll talk about the movie here in a moment, but comparatively, I like the '90s film, especially based on the time frame that the films came out, a lot better.
Fun trivia for you, Will. I just learned this. Jim pointed out to me the other day. The voice of Splinter from the 1990 movie was Kevin Clash, who does the voice of Elmo.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did not know that. So, interesting. Yeah, for me, I would have to say with my nostalgia filter on, the 1990 movie totally takes the cake. I loved that movie so much. I've probably seen it like 85 times. It's one of those films where as a kid, you know, I had the cassette tape and I wore it out because, man, I enjoyed it so much. But comparatively speaking, especially having just watched it again the other day, it's very dated. It definitely doesn't hold up well. But I will say that I think it does a much better job of establishing the Turtles' origins, establishing Shredder's origins, explaining motivations, and setting up the relationship with April O'Neil. We'll get into spoilers about the new movie a little bit later, but you know, I mean, I like the new movie, and I didn't think I would. I actually enjoyed watching it. It has some problems, I won't lie. Some of the CGI effects, I agree with you, Will, do look a little oddly dated for some reason. But overall, I think it was a fun ride. But I do think that the movie is everything's just a little convenient in terms of how it all comes together, and it seems like they've taken the plot and made it much more of like a standard, like, you know, oh no, supervillain trying to take over the world, better stop, you know, blah 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 blah, versus like, hey, look, here's some frickin' turtles who got hit by some ooze, now they eat pizza and do karate, and oh look, there's this evil dude like stealing shit. The new movie tries to make it this like epic, grand, super villainy thing, and don't get me wrong, I mean Shredder is definitely a supervillain, but in comparison, I don't know, it just felt forced, and it felt a little too overreaching for what it was trying to do. We'll just said a little side comment, which maybe we'll talk about in spoilers because we don't want to spoil people at the moment. Do I think people should go see it? I do. I think it's a fun ride. I think if you like the Ninja Turtles, you're either going to really hate it or you might like it. Like I said, I totally expected to hate it, and I ended up enjoying it. But to each their own. Depends on your nostalgia filter, I guess, and how the movie hits you. Megan Fox, I'm really sorry. Not so much. But I have to say, I did like most of what I saw with the Turtles themselves. Michelangelo is still very much the Michelangelo that I know and love. He was my favorite. The steampunk Donatello thing, I don't know that worked as much for me, but Raphael, like, he's pretty much the same Raphael from the original movie, and I really like that they kept that. In fact, there's a lot of homages to that first movie, like direct, like frickin' scene for scene things that they do, and we'll talk about those. Some of them involve pizza. But yeah, I mean, fun ride. I think you should see it, guys. Do you think people should go see it, or should they skip it?
I'm in the camp where I mean, I think people should go see this one. If you're tied to the '90s movie, I don't think you're going to be satisfied with any Ninja Turtles movie at this point. I just think that first of all, a direct shot-for-shot remake with the same effects and everything is just not going to work. I just don't know what they could do to reboot this franchise with another movie that's going to satisfy, the folks that grew up on the '90s Turtles and have it be, a great movie. I think that's part of the problem, and that why this movie is I mean, this movie doesn't. Will, you made a comment about it, but I'm going to get back to that. You're right. This movie doesn't have a plot that's much different than just about every other comic book movie that we saw. You have a big villain. He's trying to either take over the world or destroy a city so he can be rich, or blah 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 blah, whatever it is. And you have the hero or heroes that are trying to prevent that and save it and take him down. It's the same basic plot. Believe me, I didn't expect anything different from this movie. If you're expecting a totally different, subverted plot, I think out of these comic book movies, I think you're kind of looking in the wrong place. Even in a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy that just came out, I mean, that's the same plot recycled that we've seen in Star Wars and other movies just like it. A lot of movies today are recycled plots. So, that as a criticism, fine if you want to knock it down for that, but there just aren't a lot of original plots that are out there these days, especially in this genre.
So, Jim, I got to ask. So, again, just comparing with the original movie, the villain setup here, like the motivations behind Shredder and why he's doing what he's doing, which movie did a better job for you in terms of making him a credible villain and explaining motivations?
I definitely say the old movie maybe had more backstory, but I'm not so sure that this is a kid's movie. This is definitely wants to be a kid's movie, and I don't know if a kid really wants to have a lot of needs a ton of character backstory in order to know that this dude's bad and the stuff he's doing are bad and my heroes are going to try to take him down. I mean, if you break it down to its simplest components, I still think this movie was pretty effective in that. This was a kid's movie. This wasn't trying to be like an Iron Man or anything like that. This was definitely tried. Now, maybe that's where some of the problem lies. This movie tried to be a kid's movie, and some people think it tried to be like a modern comic book movie that was more for, the more adult or older comic fan or series fan. But I think it was a mindless action movie. But it didn't bore me like some of the other ones do. I actually was kind of drawn into the world. And again, remember, I'm coming in as an outsider, so it did work on me in drawing me in to the Turtles world and the whole origin story on me. I was fine with it. I actually kind of liked the spin that they put on it, and I won't talk about it here until we get to spoilers, but they kind of put a new spin on it that I thought kind of gave it more of an emotional ring than the old movie had. And you guys may know what I'm talking about, but I actually kind of liked it. The thing I didn't like about the origin story here is well, never mind. We got to talk about it in spoilers, but they kind of hit on it twice, if you know what I mean. And they really didn't need to. Once would have been fine, but we'll talk about that more in spoilers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say it's worth a watch. I mean, this thing's getting 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is terribly rotten, of course. But I'll tell you what, I'd watch this movie 3 times over before I went to see Lucy again in a heartbeat.
How about you, Will? Is this a go out and watch it?
No. There's a lot of problems with this movie. Nostalgia filter on, nostalgia filter off. This film has a lot of major flaws. Now, is this film the Antichrist incarnate on the silver screen? No. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come into this film hating it in advance for whatever reason. And I think that's unfair, and I don't think that that's necessarily earned. This film has a couple of very strong redeeming moments in it, but the problem is that they happen in the last third of the film, and when we get to spoilers, we'll talk about them. So you have kind of a similar problem to what we had with some other films that we saw this year, where you had like maybe 2 acts of just like, what the fuck is happening, and then 1 act of like, man, if this was the movie, I would have been down from the get-go. Megan Fox is terrible. She's kind of doing one-line delivery. Like she has one voice this entire film. This kind of like, no, don't go, pleading, like this one voice that she does for every single line. And again, it's, you know, she probably wasn't the best cast for this. Whatever. I mean, I was, you know, you kind of get what you pay for with that. I will agree with one of Brad's points. I thought that some of the turtles came across once they got a chance to, to kind of fly on a screen. Some of them came across pretty damn good. I thought Raphael, to me, was the standout. He had a lot of emotional weight to his character, and that's kind of what he does. He's the guy that's supposed to kind of carry that weight in these films and these stories. I thought that there was some potential with Donatello's bow staff, maybe not the rest of his technology, but his bow staff was kind of neat in places. I had big problems with the Shredder in this one. I think that in the 90s film, you have this story that's, you know, he's kind of running this this like Lost Boys or kind of like reverse Lost Boys like island, you know, taking these like young miscreants, raising them up as a family, and sending them out. And on this one, he's, well, we'll get to it. It's bad what he does from a development point of view. I think that the comparison between this and a comic book movie is apt. I think the problem is that one of the things that I've said on the show is I personally like it when a comic book movie is something else, like whatever it is within its genre, and also happens to be a superhero movie. You know, Guardians of the Galaxy is a space opera that's about superheroes. You know, Thor is a mystic fantasy that has superheroes. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles could have been so much more, could have been so much different, and instead it just slapped the superhero formula on what it did without having anything else behind it. So it becomes a lot of fluff, not a lot of substance. I'm all about, I would say totally skip this one. Not the worst movie you'll ever see. Is it a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes? Like, do I think it earns 20%? Nah, it's more of a 30% movie.
All right.
Now that's an upgrade right there.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Indeed. Well, there you have it. 2 see it's and 1 don't see it. So make of that what you will. Are you guys ready to get into some spoilers?
Sure.
Cowabunga.
All right, here we go. Spoilers for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you continue to listen, or if you're observing the live stream, watch. You do so at your own peril. If you don't care about being spoiled, then listen in. Otherwise, you may want to skip forward if you're listening on iTunes about 20 minutes or so. And if you're live streaming it, you may want to go order a pizza and come back for our Boyhood review. Anyway, spoilers, here we go. Dude, the Ninja Turtles watch Lost. I thought that was kind of awesome, but Will's rolling his eyes.
No, I like Lost. Okay.
So what's wrong? So what's wrong with that pop culture reference?
Nothing.
Where every other movie you put a pop culture reference in. If you'd put that pop culture reference in Guardians of the Galaxy, you'd have loved it.
Hold on.
Oh,
I'm looking over my shoulder trying to find someone in this room that had a problem with that pop culture reference.
Oh, that's what you did.
No, I didn't. I said I was kind of okay like Lost. Do I care about this pop culture reference? No. Like, is it good? Is it bad? It's a fine enough pop culture.
You liked Lost.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I came down mostly positive on it, save for the middle few seasons, which I thought were kind of a black hole of the writers trying to figure out what they were doing. But I digress. No, this the pop culture references on this I think were totally fine. I think that when you really look at like what makes a film work or what makes a film not work, sometimes dated pop culture references can detract from something, and I didn't really feel like there was a lot that felt distracting or out of place here. So when we talk about this film's faults, that's not one of them.
Mm.
So let's get into the faults. One of the things that I think was, again, I like this movie. Do I think it's a perfect movie? Absolutely not. It's got its issues. It started out with this cool kind of animated scene that showed the kind of the origin of the turtles, how they came into being, how Splinter, I think, came to be the sensei of the gang and all that stuff. And that was kind of cool. But then we're like 10 or 15 minutes into the movie, and they're still kind of rehashing the origin story again in the actual narrative of the movie. It's kind of like there was a redundancy there that I don't really think they needed, and I don't know which one they should have got rid of, because I did kind of like that original animation sequence at the beginning.
I did too. Yeah, I thought it looked really good.
But then when they got into it more in the movie, I think that was more to set up the April O'Neil character than anything else. But yeah, and so the fact that it was a redundant thing, I think was kind of a waste on me. But the one thing I did I liked the way they tied the origin story back to the fact that she was actually present. That whole you didn't like it, right?
I hated that. I hated that.
Why?
Oh my gosh. Because it's way too fucking convenient. Yes, I dropped an F-bomb. It's like, in the first movie, in the cartoons, in the comic books, April O'Neil is someone that the turtles end up befriending because they save her life. She is like snooping around. They end up taking her into their confidence. Here It's like, oh, look, I'm Megan Fox, and the turtles were my pets, and I know everything that happened to them because my dad was a scientist, and look how intrinsically involved I am with the plot. It's stupid. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous.
Well, it makes the world feel extremely small. When I think about world building, this is the exact same problem I had with The Amazing Spider-Man, which took a lot of its storyline, like the 2012 one. It takes a lot of the hey, I'm a brave hero, or hey, I'm 4 brave heroes that are doing this thing, and turns it into a chosen one, destiny, magic blood storyline.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the world feel very small. Now, the world of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is a particularly large world. There are a lot of different crazy characters. All of them there designed to sell a toy. I'm not saying that these are necessarily all the greatest of characters, but I remember it being a very, very big world where when April got pulled into it, you felt like she was getting pulled into something big. In this case, all of your characters have known each other since before the film started. The only character that wasn't tied to the before the film started was Will Arnett's Vernon. And I think that's a problem for a movie like this, especially for one that does such a poor job of fleshing out its characters. What we end up with is a story where all of the cool backstory stuff happened before we actually got to the movie, and we're just left hoping that that we can like pick up the pieces and dive in where we're at. If the film maybe had made the characters stronger, if we had stronger leads, if we could feel that bond between April O'Neil and those turtles, maybe this could have worked, but we didn't, so it didn't.
Well, okay, so we're being a little negative maybe. Jim, why don't you expound upon why you liked it?
I liked it because obviously it tried to make a kind of an emotional beat between April and her dad, and tying it to this other industry dude that we have, which I didn't really like that character all that much. But then also tying her in some emotional way back to the turtles, other than, she stumbled upon these turtles that had gone through the ooze, and they saved her life, and now she's going to pal around with them, which is what the 90s movies were. There was no other real connection between them. She had these turtles as a pets, and she was like, oh my God, could these be those turtles? I don't know. It worked for me. It sounds hokey, but this is a kids movie, and I think if it works for kids, I think that's cool, and it also gave me a little bit of a connection. Whereas the '90s movie, just like, okay, she's just this ditzy reporter that's stumbles upon this mess.
I think I liked the '90s, the idea behind the '90s April O'Neil. I don't think I wasn't a big fan of the actress who played her.
Yeah, he was pretty terrible.
So taking that aside, like, this is a character who, the thing about April O'Neil, at least old school April O'Neil, is she's a ballsy damn reporter who she got herself into this mess by being ballsy, and she just kept going with it. She just kept staying involved with it. Here we've got a Megan Fox who gets into it because she's got to get that story, but then that immediately fades away into this, well, I was destined to be with these turtles thing, and her, her gumption, her drive, takes a back seat to, now I'm tied to the storyline, so let's let these guys do everything. So I think that we lose a little bit of, like, you think about, like, what makes Lois Lane such a cool character. It's not because she's like Superman's girlfriend. It's because she's the reporter who will go stick her nose into trouble time after time, even if it gets her captured time after time. That's what April O'Neil kind of should be, and I think that we lost a little bit of that once we tied all the storylines here.
Yeah, well, those kind of reporters get shoved in front of subway trains. That's what happens to those kind of reporters.
Spoiler!
No!
Wow.
That does not happen in this movie.
It does not happen in this movie, and we're not going to say what franchise that did happen in, so we keep it out of spoiler territory.
No, I guess I just see it. I just see that emotional tie back to that little wrinkle in the origin story. It's just another layer for me to kind of connect the characters together. And for me it worked. For you guys it didn't, because it changed it. You think it changed it. I want to talk about another thing that definitely didn't work for me. What the fuck was Whoopi Goldberg doing in this movie? Like, oh my God, she was terrible. She needs to stop. Just stop. Stay on whatever talk show she's on, because man, she, I gotta say, she's not done. I think back to The Color Purple, and I say, give me that Whoopi Goldberg.
Wow, that's unfair to be like, give me the Whoopi from 40 years ago.
I'm just saying, in this movie, this is a terrible role. I don't know.
To be fair, this would have been a terrible role for whoever.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll put half the blame on the character and the writing. And
would it have been better if it was Meryl Streep?
No.
How about Julia Roberts?
Maybe. I don't know. Emma Stone? No, she would have been too young.
Emma Stone's forever the girl who is like, oh yeah, she's the one I liked in that movie.
Indeed. Well, let's talk about something I did like, actually, and that was the part of the origin of the Turtles, not the April O'Neil Kismet Destiny thing, but I did like the they stuck true to the Turtles being exposed to some kind of ooze, whatever, and Splinter somehow obviously he was with them, so same thing, but he still ended up raising them in the sewer. He taught them karate. They had their underground lair, which I thought was awesome. I appreciated sort of their dynamic. I liked the pizza thing. I like how when they're like handing out the pizza or whatever, a slice still falls on Splinter, just like it did in the original movie. Thought that was a nice callback. One thing that did make me scratch my head a little bit and go, is apparently Splinter finds a book on ninjutsu in the sewer randomly and is able to teach himself ninjutsu from a book. In the original movie, like, Splinter's watching his master, who's a master of ninjutsu, and he's like, Jim Henson puppet rat, like, mimicking, and here he just reads it in a book. I don't know. I wasn't sold.
Yeah, if it had been, the Joy of Sex book, then we would have had a totally different.
Oh my God, yeah. That's, whoo. No, the cartoon had actually a really good Splinter in that he was actually a guy who was, a master of martial arts. And he was banished, and he lives in the sewers. He finds these turtles. The mutagen falls on him, and the last thing that he touched was a rat. So he's actually a guy who gets transformed into a part rat thing, who knew all this martial arts from being this like exiled martial artist, and that's why he had this, and that's how he was able to teach turtles. I
So
thought that
the turtles then were guys that touched turtles?
no, they were
turtles?
they were turtles that turned into these things because the last thing they touched before they got mutated was him as a human. The last thing he touched was the rats that he had also befriended.
Right.
So
Right.
I liked that a little better because it made the like, well, how does this guy know martial arts? Like, it made it a lot.
Right. Right.
I really dug some of the action scenes in this movie. I liked the design of Shredder. Now, granted, his story was not fleshed out at all. And Will, I want to hear your thoughts on what you didn't like about Shredder, but I kind of like the design, the visual design of Shredder as an entity, I guess, and a combatant against the turtles, especially in the there were a couple of battle scenes. There was one in the sewer, which I really liked his attack on Splinter, and also the final battle scene on the roof with Shredder. I thought was they did some amazing stuff with the virtual camera there. If you watch like how they moved the viewpoint around during that scene to heighten the action on that rooftop, I thought was pretty well done.
I agree.
Dude swinging from a spider web, whatever.
I agree. I think for me, I don't know. I like to call this Shredder Shreddy Krueger because they make him way too reliant on like his knives or whatever.
What else would I expect from a character called Shredder?
Well, I know, but I don't know. Shredder like is a martial artist as well, and yeah, they're doing fighting, but this Shredder just seems way too reliant on like, oh, look at me throw my cool knives around, and oh, look at how they return, and he looked more like a transformer in some ways than like a cool martial artist wearing some armor. Yeah, but you know, I don't know. Will, you're nodding along.
Precisely my problem with it. I thought the design looked like, if there's anywhere where I could feel like Michael Bay's like, you know, presence on this film, it was in the design of Shredder, who was just loaded down with way too much shit to be aesthetically pleasing.
Is that because you guys picture as just a Shredder as a samurai dude in a costume from the old movie, or
the film establishes him as this badass martial artist early on? The first time we see Shredder in this film, he's just kind of stripped down into like I forget what he was wearing, but it was like shirts and shorts or shirts and pants and something like that, and he's just like beating the shit out of his of someone, you know. He's just winning in this fight, just like, man, this guy is so effective as a martial artist. I can't wait until this guy gets to fight the turtles. And then they put him in this giant clunky robot suit, and we never get to see that guy fight the turtles.
Exactly.
We get to see
it's an exoskeleton.
It's a clunky, ugly exoskeleton.
It's a modernized exoskeleton for weapon. I mean, it's a weaponized modern exoskeleton. That's the way I saw it, anyway.
It detracted from the action, and it detracted from like the way the character like looks on screen. Like whenever Shredder was on screen, I didn't feel like, oh man, I'm menaced by this guy. I felt like, when is this guy going to turn into a car? And the thing is that the action sequences that he was involved in, and this is, you know, I've been very negative on this movie because I hated this movie.
Yeah,
but there were some things that I did really like.
Let it out. Let it go.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not calling a spade here. There are some action sequences later on in the film, specifically like one where they're in this weird like downhill slalom type thing that I thought were fucking amazing. Like, I thought that in that particular scene, and it's a very high octane, lots of action scene where we don't have the Shredder doing stuff. You got to see each of the turtles doing something that's creative, that's something that speaks to their personality, speaks to where they're at in the art. And I remember thinking during that scene, and it's a long scene, thankfully, it's a long scene.
A little too long.
For me, I thought like, man, if this were the movie, if the ideas that were done in this movie were expanded to the rest of it, I would be here doing a completely different review, because I thought that they more or less nailed that sequence, from Donatello like saying, I want to be the badass now, and jumping out and then flipping that car using his like kind of his wits, from Leonardo using his katanas to kind of almost like ski down. This little part where they're quipping a bit, and the trailer's whipping back and forth, and they're ducking underneath it and kind of jumping up and continuing to quip. There was so much going on, but it was very clear. I always had a sense of place. I always had a sense of personality and character. I always knew what was happening, who was doing it, and why they were doing it. And the action sequence at the end, like the big fight with the Shredder, you got to see a little bit of that too. The problem is that you had 4 characters that showed off a good deal of personality in that fight, and then you had Shredder, a villain who did not show off any personality. So that was one of the problems I had there. The villain did not step up to the level of the heroes, and what good is a hero without a good villain?
You definitely didn't see Shredder's humanity at all. And I agree with you. I think that downhill wintry battle fight scene I thought was pretty awesome. For me, it was just a tad too long. I have a problem with long action scenes. They tend to get a little redundant for me and repetitive, and so I kind of check out a little bit. That one was probably just a few ticks too long. There was also one beat in that scene that totally was out of place and kind of pissed me off. And that was a scene where Megan Fox and Will Arnett are in one of the vehicles, and she ends up like leaning out the window or something to do something, and he has to look like something happened, and he ended up looking like right at her ass, and the camera like stopped right on her ass in the middle of that scene, which was fucking ridiculously out of place, for tonally way off base for that scene and for the movie, if you ask me.
Yes, but why did they cast her in this movie?
Right.
Why else did they cast her except for she's a hot chick?
That was the only part of the movie, really, where they sexualized really anything. I thought
Michelangelo sexualized her the entire film. That was one of my problems with Michelangelo.
He had a crush on her, but I don't think he sexualized her.
It was a little uncomfortable to me, like the way he hit on her, like, especially their size difference made a big portion of that, and the fact that she was obviously not interested, and he would keep like pressing the issue. It was very uncomfortable. Michelangelo was a perfectly fine character, but he felt very off when he became like the horny April O'Neil stalker. Like I felt that kind of hurt him as a character.
Yeah, they could have toned that down a little bit for me. I did like the romantic angle a little bit. But they did overplay it, Will. I agree. Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, guys, we do have a whole other movie to review tonight, and we've gone a little over our allotted time here. Any absolutely quick and dirty final thoughts on TMNT?
Yeah, I just like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I think I've seen at least one critic bashing this movie for being, quote, loaded with plot holes, and it just makes me laugh when any of these comic book movies get taken to task for plot holes. Because I can find plot holes, and you put any comic book movie in front of me and I'll find it. So I think that's a little bit unfair to single out this movie for that. And secondly, the plot hole that he called out as his example wasn't a plot hole, because he said, well, 1 minute they're careening down a mountain and having a battle, and the next minute they're sliding through the sewer. And I'm like, they totally explained that in the movie. Even before that scene started, they said there's a
maintenance hatch, right?
Yeah, the little hatch they had to do to get in.
And they get in that way. And even at the end of the mountain scene, they said, there's the place, there's the maintenance room. And then, boom, they're in the tunnel. To me, that's not a plot hole. And so, it indicates somebody that had a prejudged kind of hate for this movie and just took it out for it. And that kind of ticks me off.
Or maybe not even a prejudged hate. It could just be a matter of like a guy not verbalizing it correctly. Because my
thing is, not paying attention or not seeing the movie.
Because to me, this is the problem with this isn't that there were plot holes. I mean, every movie's gonna have some plot holes, and if there were any here, I didn't see any that really stood out for me as offensive. The problem with this one is that the plot was bad. Like, not that there were plot holes; it was the plot was bad. And I think that like that's kind of the angle that I'm going with what's kind of been a slashing of this film is that there were a lot of things that this film did wrong, but not plot holes, not like, and there's a lot of things that this film could have done different, whatever. The biggest problem it had was that it was just the narrative, the backstory, all of that was just incredibly to me it was just dumb. And it made for a very unenjoyable experience, but not plot holes. Not plot holes.
Well, we'll close out this discussion by saying this is a very divisive topic. I'm I made up this image yesterday of like a picture of the old turtles and the new turtles. We put it on our Facebook page, and it said this or this. And I'm amazed at how many people actually engaged with that post. Hundreds of people liked or commented on the post. It was kind of crazy. We've never had that kind of engagement. So you can tell people are passionate. And the overwhelming opinion, surprisingly, seems split. A lot of people, sort of like Will and I, are like, the 90s were better, this new movie. I don't think the new movie sucked, but a lot of them say it did. I think it had its issues. But the other half of people actually say both movies were awesome. Why can't both coexist? Why does one have to be better than the other? Can't they just be fun turtle movies? And I think that's cool. I'm actually happy to see people in my age group who love the original movie also get something out of this movie too. I think the Turtles bring a lot to a new generation, and I don't know. I would personally go see another new Turtles movie. I don't know about you guys, but it's neat to see that not everyone universally hated this movie. So interesting split, I think. But yeah. All right, so we do have another movie to discuss. Let's go ahead and just jump right. Oh, maybe not.
My pizza's gone. We gotta get rid of the turtle.
Aww, wah, 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 wah.
Aww.
All right. Well, here we go. Our discussion of Richard Linklater's Boyhood. I can't decide if this is my The Rock eyebrow or Spock eyebrow.
Because of that voice you just used, let's call it the Spock eyebrow. That was a very Spock voice.
Indeed. Anyway, well, that was my teal'c indeed, so it's all kinds of messed up. But anyway, Richard Linklater's Boyhood is an incredible film project, 12 years, literally, in the making. For those who are unfamiliar, this is basically a fiction movie detailing the life of a kid as he grows from boyhood into being an adult. And what's cool about this movie is, and Jim, if you want to give a little more backstory, feel free. But basically, Richard Linklater got these actors together for a couple weeks every year, and they filmed parts of this movie. So we literally see not only the main character, but the ancillary cast as well, aging 12 years. It's pretty awesome to see that progression. Will, I know you kind of had a big hard-on for this film, so
wow.
maybe you want to...
That's inappropriate.
Yeah, like,
inappropriate.
Maybe you want to kick us off a little bit here. What are your thoughts?
This is how you get me on a registry, Brad.
Well, they couldn't call the movie Manhood. That would be a totally different...
Yeah, that's a totally different movie. The porn parody is a completely different film.
Oh, my God.
Okay, woosah. Boyhood is a film by Richard Linklater that, as you were mentioning, Brad, is very ambitious in its approach. What happened was he took this actor, this young 6-year-old actor at the time, Eller Coltrane, and filmed him over the course of 12 years. With every year they filmed for about 3 or 4 days with him, Patricia Arquette, Ethan Hawke, a few of the other cast members. Telling the story about this boy going from first grade up until his first day of college, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the events that happen along there. But that's the premise. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a character who's growing before our eyes in real time, with the actors who are growing before our eyes also in real time. I was fortunate in that with Jim, we were able to both see one of the premieres of this at South by Southwest, and then I was able to see it last month when it opened here in Austin, Texas. And this is currently sitting at my favorite film of the year slot. By a large margin. Like, the next film after it is pretty substantially behind it. A lot of times you go to these film festivals and there's a lot of like hyperbole and exaggeration, and this film is full of hyperbole and exaggeration. Like, for a film of its size and its stature, I think there's been more buzz about this film than a lot of other films, that would be in its peer group, and I think that that's with good cause. For me, what was so great about this film is that it had these themes that felt very, very, very specific to a lot of the things that I experienced in my life. I mean, a lot of this film is set in Central Texas, in areas that I've personally been to. A lot of the themes have to do with like what it's like being a boy in this area, what it's like being a boy who comes from a broken home, what it's like to be a boy who comes from this circumstance or that. And I experienced a lot of those exact same things. So at the end of this film, I remember thinking, like, this film is very, very specific to me. I saw it in an audience with, like, there were like 1,200 people in the theater I saw, and I had a chance to talk with several of them afterwards. And the majority of those people felt the exact same way I did. And I realized that while this film felt very, very specific, it also felt very universal at the same time. We talk about films on this podcast are like, oh, this is a must-watch, or man, you shouldn't watch this. I think this is probably the first film that I've talked about with you guys, and this may be hyperbole in and of itself, but I think this is the first film that I've talked about with you guys that I would consider to be an important film, that I would consider to be the type of film that, like, it's not just in the, you know, the category of, like, best film of the year. Like, this is one that could make, like, best film of the decade for me. It's certainly in the running. It is that darn good. So a lot of dramatic praise, and gosh, like I hope the audience doesn't get whiplash like going through my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles review to that, because that's a very swift turnaround. But if you get a chance to see Boyhood, and you probably, depending on where you live, you may have that chance. I'm seeing it in a lot of a lot of cities, a lot of towns are extending their runs. The local indie theater here in Austin was running it on one screen, and for about a good month they extended it to running on 3 of the 4 screens for multiple weeks in a row. That doesn't happen with this type of film. So you may have a chance to see it in your area. If you get the chance, please go do so. I think that you're going to love what you see.
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, well, unlike the previous movie, I think we're pretty much in line here.
High five, Jim.
I love this movie for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into those. You know, we'll talk about some now and then in spoilers. You know, there's been a lot of hyperbole about this movie, and you know, this is something like, it really is something like I don't think I've ever seen on screen before. We talk about the quote-unquote the gimmick of this movie is that, oh, he shot this over 12 years. He took a 6-year-old kid as an actor and kind of followed him every year, filming a little bit every year for 12 years until the kid was ready to go off to college in the story. This is not a documentary. It sounds like it could be a documentary. There's been other documentaries that have done similar things. This is a narrative movie, and this was Linklater he wrote this as well. He had this vision of this story that was going to take place over 12 years. And just having that alone is just mind-blowing. I mean, he had the general story, quote-unquote, written from the beginning, the script, I guess you could say, but they really didn't have a script with words every year. He kind of knew where he wanted the story to go, but they basically wrote the script each year for that year's scenes. And just incredible the way that it all came together. The name of the movie is Boyhood, and it sounds like it's really focused on this boy, and it is somewhat, but really this is the story about a family. The boy, his sister, his mother, his dad, a series of stepdads. Just a great story about family. Also, you hear a lot about this is an awesome movie, it's incredible. Unfortunately, the hyperbole can probably amp up people's expectations maybe a little bit too much. I'm going to put it out there right now. There's nothing fantastical that happens anywhere in this movie. As taken as a whole, it's a beautiful piece. It's a beautiful film, and it works together as a whole to come together. I would say that what do they say? I would say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
For this movie, there's no battles, there's no bank robberies, there's no real villains in this movie. It's just the usual stuff that happens. We'll hit on it really well. There's a lot of things in this movie that are very specific, but universal themes. And I think anybody who goes to this movie can find a little piece of themselves in watching this kid and this family go through the 12 years. And I think that's the beauty of this movie, and there's a lot of hooks, a lot of emotional hooks in this movie for me. I came from a somewhat broken family, so that that ties in with me. The feeling of moving away from friends that you have come to know and hang out with and love, and all of a sudden you have to move away, going to new schools, stepdads, divorce. I mean, there's a lot of emotional hooks in this movie for me, both from a kid who grew up through those ages, obviously, and fortunate for me as a parent. I can kind of see it from both sides, so it's kind of a double whammy for me. Yeah, I loved it. I would recommend people, if this movie's playing anywhere near you, go see it. I think it's going to be in the running for possibly 3 or 4 Oscar nominations at the end of the year. Best Director, maybe Best Picture, maybe even Best Supporting Actress.
Patricia Arquette.
For Patricia Arquette. Patricia Arquette is excellent in it. Ethan Hawke is excellent in it. Just a good movie, so seek it out.
Yeah, you mentioned the hyperbole, the hype. It's unfortunate for me because you guys saw this at South by, and you talked about it quite a bit, about how much you loved it, and no matter how much I'm like, no, don't say anything, don't tell me. It's just natural when you're that excited about a movie that those things come out, and you weren't the only ones. Everywhere you read on Facebook and on movie blogs, people are talking about this film, and unfortunately, I didn't get to see it back then, and I try to be, I try to stay chaste. I try to keep myself pure from other people's thoughts and opinions. But when people have seen the movie, 4 months before it's out, and you can't avoid those opinions, it's hard not to have your thoughts influence. And I think for me, I really suffered here because I was expecting this incredibly, emotional, epic, incredible thing. And while I agree it's a good movie, and while I like the 12-year thing, I just don't think this movie could possibly live up to all the expectations that everyone kind of helped create for me. And again, my expectations are sort of my own beast, I guess, but just from everything that I had heard, it just sounded like it was this, oh my God, the most amazing thing ever. And I watched it and I kept waiting, okay, something amazing must be about to happen, something incredible must be on its way, what is it going to be? And every time we not time shifted, that makes it sound like a future movie. Every time we moved forward in the story, I'm like, oh man, is this it? Is this when the other shoe's going to drop? And it never happens. And Jim, you're very much right, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, Shot. But this movie really is just about the story of a family, and it doesn't have to be anything epic or incredible or fantastical or even something with big, huge things happening. I think the beauty of this movie is it's a small film about a boy growing up in a family very much like the families that maybe we can identify with, and I think that's awesome. I just think it's unfortunate that a lot of people are going to see this movie with sort of the same expectations, and it may be impossible to not be let down when you see it because you've heard, oh my God, this is the best, most amazing thing ever. How can it live up to that kind of hype? I don't know that it can.
Yeah, and I think it's going to depend on how some people are. I think for some people, I think it will live up to the hype, and for others, I think it won't because maybe their expectations are too highly tempered for it. This is just a movie that presents a lot of just everyday normal stuff that we experience in life, and therefore a lot of people have said this is the most truthful movie. I mean, this is really a true movie about growing up, and when I think back on my life, I think about the things that pop into my mind from time to time, and they're not always the most huge or painful things that have happened to me. They're just little moments in my life that when you think of a deceased parent or times you spent with family early on, they're little things. It could be a time at the beach, or it could be hanging out with a friend on a playground or something like that. And that's what this movie is. It's kind of a series of those events that you could look at kind of as memories of of a life growing up in a family. So, like I said, I connected to a lot of it. I really like this movie. I did see it twice. I think it's a movie that got me just as much the second time in certain parts as it did the first time, and we'll talk about some of those parts later. But yeah,
it's a time capsule of Boyhood, in that it takes all of those moments, all of these different things that happen as you're growing up, and it presents them all. And I think the way that this film impacted me emotionally, and I was right there with you, Jim, in that as much the second time, at the end of it, I'm in the tears, because it got me just as much the second time. The best way to go into this film is not to expect it if you're trying to knock down a mountain, there's some films that do it with an earthquake, that do it with a crack of lightning, or do it with something big. And this film almost erodes it slowly over time. The emotional impact of this is built up in a series of small moments over and over and over again, as opposed to this punctuated moment, this punctuated moment. So it's more of a compounding effect, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right.
Mm. All right. Well, why don't we just move on to spoilers? Are you good with that?
Sure.
Good.
Right. So here we go. Spoilers for Boyhood. Many of you probably have not seen this because this movie is not as widely released as it should be. I talk about not living up to the hype. I just want to say, for the record, I really enjoyed the movie. It's definitely on my top 10 list of the year. I just don't think it was... I just don't think, without going into it fresh like you guys did, there was any way for me to enjoy it on the same level, unfortunately. But it is a great movie. And so let's talk about some of the things that make it great. We mentioned Patricia Arquette. She was really, really exceptional in this movie. And I think it's awesome because she's kind of unknown is the wrong word. Obviously, she's known, but she's not like a big, huge name like a Julia Roberts or a Meryl Streep. You know what I mean? She's just not. And so to see her go from a show like Medium on TV, for crying out loud, to doing something like this is pretty awesome. I was happy to see her in this film.
Yeah, I think about her film roles, even the films that I enjoyed, she was stellar in True Romance. I enjoyed her in Stigmata, which was kind of a flawed movie, but I liked what she did there, But she's one of those people who I don't think that she's really had her star turn. She's had, she's never really quite broken through, and I would say this was her star turn. And I hope that when it comes time to recognize people, granted, we still have a lot of Oscar movies that are going to be coming out this fall, so there's going to be a lot of other names that are going to be in this category. But I would certainly like to see her in the discussion for best, whether it be supporting actor, probably it'd be in the supporting actress category for her. I would definitely love to see her in the discussion because she carried so much of the emotional weight. I mentioned in the pre-spoiler section some of the moments that really got to me, that kind of made me tear up, and I think almost every single one of them had to do with something that she was doing or some way that she was interacting with her son.
Yeah, I think like I said, I hope and as you said, Will, I hope she does get recognized at the end of the year. The one thing that I'm afraid of is that where this movie is not a huge, doesn't have a huge, has a couple of scenes with her that really get to me, but mostly not because they're overly dramatic, but because they're, extremely true is the only way I can put it. These are scenes that I could see playing out. Especially, guys, if you're a parent or have been a parent, this movie will doubly get you, I think, because you can empathize with a character like Patricia Arquette. She's a single mom in this movie, and she's going through. She's not perfect, right? She's not a perfect mom, but she's trying the best she can to do what she can for her kids and her family. And I totally get that. I see a lot of my mother in that character. And I'm not ashamed to admit, making bad choices in life partners is part of that. She had a flaw where she was attracted to dudes that were not good for her in the end. and you see that a lot in real life, and I just thought the way this movie portrayed that was very well done. And I think that's what adds emotional weight to her character. There's no like huge scene where they're gonna throw up at the Oscars, and maybe that one scene at the end. But I don't know if there's any other scene in that movie where you could how when someone's getting nominated for the award, they throw up the scenes of them acting in the movie, and it's some really intense emotional scene. Really isn't that in this movie?
Well,
really characters. Maybe that one scene.
That one we're in spoilers at the end when he's going off to college and she's okay until he's like, oh, I'm just going to throw this thing away, and then she falls apart.
Right.
That's probably that standout scene. And I got to say, it really wasn't until that happened that I finally sort of emotionally really sort of had a moment, I guess, because I think about my own mom, who she's passed away a few years ago, but when I was going off to college, she pretended so hard that she was okay and that she was happy for me, and then I'm packing my stuff up in a box, and it wasn't until that moment that it all just sort of hit her and she couldn't keep it in, and I'm getting misty thinking about it, and we sort of had the same kind of moment that's in that movie, and for me it was like, okay, I get it now. This is awesome. This is what I came to this movie looking for, and so I don't know. I really loved her in that scene, and but the thing is, I kind of hope they don't splash it up on the screen when they're talking about her being nominated, because I don't want people to see it out of context and then, not have the same
True.
experience.
Like they're building up to that one moment, and this is the scene, because you're absolutely right. I think that one is certainly an emotional touchstone of this film, but I think one of its strengths, at least to me, was that instead of it having a few anchor points, its emotional touchstones felt to me at least very scattered throughout the film. There were a lot of things, depending on your circumstance, you could latch onto. I come from a similar background as kind of what Jim was mentioning. I came from a background with a mother who chose a lot of men that did not work out for her. She went through several marriages during my boyhood. And as a result of that, we ended up living with my grandparents while she went back to school to try to make something of herself. So there's a lot of that where I was like, that's not my mom on the screen, but I saw a lot of her in some of the decisions that she had to make. And so I was able to connect onto some of those touchstones. I think that's really where this film flourishes. It doesn't have that one scene that everyone's just gonna bawl their eyes out at. I think depending on what your background is and what your experiences are, you're gonna find something else to pick out of this film. I mean, there's even a brother-sister dynamic that I think, depending on what your sibling situation is, I think that some people might really connect onto, or some people might think it's just kind of funny and cutesy and look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I thought the sister. Although the movie really doesn't focus much on her, I thought she was the typical, typical younger sister or younger sibling, or older sibling or whatever. She was slightly older, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And, she's 2 years older, I think, something like that. Yeah,
she was the typical. She had her bratty moments, her withdrawn moments, her rebellious moments. And by the way, the sister in this movie is played by Lorelai Linklater, who is Richard Linklater's daughter, which is kind of ballsy to cast your own daughter, I think, in your movie project that's going for 12 years. I thought she did a wonderful job, and Ethan Hawke too. I like Ethan Hawke a lot. He's done some crappy movies, and of course he's done some. He did the first Purge movie, right? I mean, we know that.
Yeah, he did.
But he's done some great movies, especially with Linklater. I mean, he was in all of the Before series of movies. Was fantastic in those, and he does a great job here. And you can see them age as well. It's more noticeable, obviously, to see a kid age slowly over a movie from 6 to 18 or 19. But you also have the other characters, too, that are aging. You see a young Ethan Hawke. around the time between the first two before movies is when this movie started, and then toward the end of the movie he's definitely aged, and so has Patricia Arquette, and I think that's the magic of this movie, and I think they said they filmed like for a couple of weeks every year. So they filmed just for a couple. They got together for a couple of weeks, did the filming, and then they were done until the next year.
Yeah.
That's
one
how
of the
did it.
things I really appreciated about that was, especially with Patricia Arquette, it's like she starts out kind of on the thinner side. In the middle years of the movie, she's gotten much heftier than she started out, and then she ends up being pretty thin again. And what's neat about it is, in the beginning of the movie, we see her on this path, right, to go back to school, and she's dealing with being a single mom, and like she's getting bigger as she's going through all these stresses. And then she gets her degrees, and she gets this awesome job, and now she's getting slimmer, and she's more on top of her life. And I just think it was kind of neat. Obviously, it's probably not an intentional thing. I know she had some kids while this movie was being filmed. It's hard to get off the baby weight or whatever. But I thought it was so cool because, like, in other movies where it's fictionalized and it shows an actress over time, do they necessarily think to, like, I don't know, bulk them up and show the body type changing over the years? I mean, they put on some face makeup, but really what do they do to help see the passage of time? So I thought it was really cool to see the natural sort of progression there, Anyway.
What did you guys? The one thing I liked about this movie too is, and I don't know if this is the writing or partly the actor. We're talking about the kid now. The actor's name is Eller Coltrane, who plays Mason. I forget what his last name was in the movie, but he plays Mason in the movie. And you see the end of the movie, and you see what kind of a kid he is at the end of the movie, or a young adult he is. He's kind of one of these. He's he's a thinker. He's an introvert. He's a bit of an introvert. He's a thinker. He's artsy. He's got definitely an artsy edge to him. Totally not a jock or anything like that. But you can see early on in the movie that he was the same way, kind of that dreamer, thinker type of kid when he was 6. And he didn't really. You can see his. I guess what you're saying is you can see his basic personality type, even early on when he was like 6 or 7 years old, and how he ended up being as an adult. I think that's just amazing to see. Very interesting to see that his DNA was set. I mean, way back when he was 6. He didn't have some big transformation or turn into something that he was totally not when he was 6 years old.
Right. And that goes to show you the strength of Richard Linklater, both as a guy who works with actors and also a guy that's able to script around things. During at South by Southwest, during the Q&A where they had some of the people up on stage, Eller Coltrane, he seemed to have that same personality type or similar personality type as Mason. Very intellectual, a little more reserved, maybe even a little awkward at times. Yeah. And I feel as though that there was, that certainly wasn't an accident in terms of casting. I'm sure that Linklater had mentioned that he wanted to have a character who had this particular arc. So you can tell he cast a kid who would be able to play that, and a lot of it was kind of crossing his fingers and hoping things would work out. But a lot of it was just working with him and working with the story and massaging it. Like, it would have been really easy for them to have done a storyline where he joins the football team his junior year, but it would have not rang true at all for this actor, for these characters, and this storyline. And instead, you have this really natural progression, and a lot of that comes from just Richard Linklater, like knowing kind of what he was going for, the general story, but then just adapting it as he got from point A to point B. Like one of the things he had mentioned was from the beginning of the shooting, day one, 12 years in this process, he knew what the last shot was going to be. But everything in between there was going to be the improvise.
Do you think that he fashioned and wrote molded, I guess, the Mason character a little bit after himself?
I would imagine that Linklater and
You know, the photography thing versus the filmmaking thing.
yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, he mentioned like every year they could get together. This is something Linklater said in his interview. Like he would get together with these actors and say, okay, well, what's happened with Mason over the last year? Like, where's he grown? You know, and it was a very collaborative process. So I'm sure that Eller was able to bring a lot of his traits into it, and build on something that was kind of organic and natural and worked for everybody. And to me, as someone that's done, has done very, very light amount of like stage stuff, I enjoy like the idea of like working with someone where I can collaborate on a character as opposed to being told like this is exactly what has to happen. There's a lot of freedom to that. And Linklater, it just shows in not just in this, but in the before films, even in films like Bernie, films where he's, that might maybe follow a little bit more of a structured storyline in terms of like the plot points that have to be put out there. This is a guy who works really well with his cast and who really makes just dialogue-heavy scenes just pop and sparkle.
Yes, yeah. It's going to be difficult, I think, for this kid. Eller Coltrane to maybe grow his. Who knows what's in store for him right after this movie?
Right. Yeah.
But because this isn't just a movie where we saw the kid in one movie and one story. We saw like most of this kid's life in a movie. So and we think we know this person, and now to see that person in another movie as a different character is, I think, going to be even more jarring for us as viewers. So that'll be interesting to see how that would happen.
Indeed. All right, well, I think it's safe to say that we think everyone should pretty much go out and see this movie. I even hesitate to talk more about spoilers because some of you are listening that can't go see the movie, and I don't want to completely rob you of all the joy that you may have from seeing this movie. That said, try to do what I could not and temper your expectations based on what you've heard. Try to go in and just take it for what it is. Even though it is a great movie, don't sit there every moment thinking, oh my God, where is this awesomeness going to come? Because, there's little bits of awesome sprinkled throughout that make it awesome overall. There's not one big event per se.
You're right. And do you mind if I add one more thing? There were a couple of points in the movie that I think were intentionally put in there to kind of give you a little bit of suspense, like something might happen. There's a scene where the boys are together in their camping, quote, in this house that's under construction, and they're doing typical things that boys would do on a camp out. They're talking about girls, they're drinking beers, they're razzing each other. At the same time, they're playing with this buzzsaw blade, like this circular saw blade, and they're chucking it at the wall. And I think that, the scene, when I initially saw it, I'm like, oh God, something's going to happen here. So, yeah, one of these kids is going to get that saw blade, buried in his face or some shit like that. And then there's another scene where the alcoholic stepdad gets in the car, and he tells all the kids, get in the fucking car with me, right? And right off the bat that this is a fucking bad idea, right? This guy is drunk, he's pissed off, and he's on the road, and he starts to go around cars and stuff like that. And you're like, this is it. They're going to have a big traffic accident, and then, boom, they cut the scene, and it's not there. I think those things were put in intentionally to I don't know, to maybe say, hey, look, not everything, it kind of subverts the expectation a little bit. Like, oh, I know where this scene's going, and Linklater's like, fuck you, no you don't, because I'm not going to go there.
Right, and it also kind of like echoes like one of those things that you experience as a boy. Like you play, not everyone does, but you play around with the thing that you're not supposed to play around with, and someone could have gotten hurt. And it's not a matter of every time that someone does get hurt. In a cinematic world, like when someone has a razor blade, someone's going to get cut by a razor blade. But in this one, it just shows like this is the type of thing that boys do. This is the type of thing that can happen. When you're in a situation where you have an unstable parental figure, the scary stuff isn't always the, like, someone gets hurt or someone gets directly yelled at or someone gets hit. Not to say that that stuff isn't frightening, but a lot of times what's scary is just the not knowing, the getting loaded up into the car and being driven off, and, like, knowing that, like, I'm in an unsafe situation and I don't know what's going to happen now. So I think that it was able to play off of, like, play off of expectations, but also just kind of capture these moments for what they are instead of what they have to be built up to be.
There's just so many moments in this movie, and we're running out of time, so we can't get into them. But just a lot of moments that really rang true with me, and experiences that I had as a kid. Like I said, that I can emotionally connect to this movie right away with. There were some right off the bat, but definitely. I think, Will, like you, I think it's going to be right up there for me at the end of the year. We've got a lot of movies left to see, a lot of good movies coming out. We'll see where this fits at the end of the year.
Indeed. All right. Moving on to some plugs. Jim, what have you got this week?
I'm just going to plug a local movie bear group. We're still trying to get something going. It's the Botop Movie Bears. Botop stands for Bears of the Old Pueblo, BOTOP. It's Botop Movie Bears on Facebook.
And we have an event this weekend, do we not?
I'm not sure. Do we?
Aren't we going to see Guardians of the Galaxy on Saturday?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I wasn't sure we were making it a Bears thing, that's all.
Oh,
we hadn't talked about that, so I don't know.
Miscommunication. I thought we were doing that. Okay. Well, maybe we're not doing it Saturday. Stay tuned. All right. Will, what do you got?
So mine it's going to be something that I'm going to have a write-up for this Friday on thelinduslist.com. It's a film that I saw tonight, but since it's in the promo stage, not in the press screen only stage, I can totally rave about it right now. And it's a film called Calvary. This is a film that's it stars Brendan Gleeson, and he's this priest who is threatened. His life is threatened during a confession that he's taking. And so all throughout this film, he's dealing with all of these people around him who are just like all of these crazy sinners, almost like out of like a David Lynch film. Like these people or like Twin Peaks. Like these characters are so damn quirky and so damn full of personality and character as they're doing all of these just kind of more mundane sins, and he has to deal with the fact that someone's threatened his life. It almost plays like a reverse whodunit in some ways, because you know what's going to happen up front and it builds up to it, while dealing with all of these characters. I ended up enjoying I saw the description of it, thought it would be interesting. I ended up enjoying it a lot more than even I was expecting. Brendan Gleeson is amazing. His beard deserves special recognition. It was damn good. And just some of the supporting cast, including like Aidan Gillen, who you guys might remember as Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, Dylan Moran from Shaun of the Dead and Notting Hill, and a few other characters. Anyways, if you get a chance to see it, Calvary was surprisingly solid. Definitely something you should check out.
Yeah, well, I want to see that one. I got a question though.
Yeah.
Sometimes with these British movies or Irish movies or Scottish movies especially, I sometimes have a problem picking up the dialect or the accent. Is it super heavy here? Am I going to need
It's not as bad as some
subtitles?
of the other films that I've seen. Like in terms of like being able to pick up the accent, like most of the time I see this. So this is an Irish film, and a lot of times, for me at least personally, I've got a terrible ear for these things. So I'll watch an Irish flick, and maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes is just trying to get
gibberish.
It's like it takes me a few minutes just to kind of settle down to the rhythm of it. With this one, from the very first conversation, and it's an intense conversation, maybe that helps. That everything is so poignant from line one. But it's very easy to understand. In fact, I think the only thing that really, from an accent perspective, Littlefinger, Aidan Gillen's Irish accent was a little not good. But that was one amongst the rest of the cast, and it wasn't like it was hard to understand. It just kind of felt a little fake. Yeah. Cool. But anyways, good movie. You should totally go see it if it's playing near you.
Calvary.
Awesome.
Calvary.
All right. From me this week, it's no secret that we are huge Breaking Bad fans, and the Breaking Bad prequel show, Better Call Saul, is slated to premiere on AMC next February, which is my birthday month. So happy birthday to me from AMC. Anyway, AMC recently posted a 10-second clip of footage from Better Call Saul. Basically, it's Saul talking about the need for a lawyer, and while it's only 10 seconds, it's definitely got me jonesing for some Better Call Saul. So we'll post a link to that in the show notes. But man, I'm really, really looking forward to the show. Saul was one of my favorite characters, as well as some of the other guys that are coming back for the show, like Mike. Is going to be one of the main characters, Mike Ehrmantraut, and Huel, of course. So should be a fun show. Can't wait for next February. And then the only other thing I'm going to mention is Doctor Who returns on Saturday, August 23rd. So not this Saturday, but next. I mention it now because I'll probably forget next week to say something about it. But yeah, if you've been jonesing for Doctor Who like I have, it's been a frickin' year and a half since we've had new Doctor Who, practically. So good times. Good times. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Not sure what we'll be reviewing yet, but guys, this was episode 90. Can you believe that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's
90.
crazy.
Coming up on the
Episode
century
90.
mark.
Yeah. Our centennial's coming up.
I know. We're gonna have to do something big. It's funny. Like I see these other shows that have like 100+ episodes, and I'm like, man, our show will. That's so far away. We'll never do that. And Jim tonight was like, hey, this is our 90th episode. Did you know that? And I'm like, holy shit, really? So yeah, that's pretty awesome. So I guess episode 100 we'll have to do something cool.
If we keep doing it, we might get pretty good at it.
Yeah, but maybe by episode 200.
We pretty much suck at it right now, so hey.
I don't know about
that. All right. Well, have a good one, everyone. Take care, and we'll catch y'all next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nano.